Welcome back to the Ad Project Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Maarja Hewitt.
And I'm Joe Schellerud.
And today we're going to talk about Amazon Marketing Cloud 101, the basics.
Yeah. Before we get in, I was listening to you how you said your name. It was okay. I've known you for how long now?
4 years.
Yeah. And last week, Maarja told me because I said Maarja, and apparently, what is it?
Maarja.
So
It's technically 2 syllables, but my name is already very difficult for people to say. That I'm not going to get picky. So most people say Maarja.
Sure.
So it's 3 syllables.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I just corrected Joe because he said it very distinctly.
And then it just took me back. It's like, do I even know you? And then I've also put people up in the office to try to convince Maarja that her name has 3 syllables.
Yeah, they're trying to gaslight me into thinking I've been saying my name wrong for 34 years.
Yep. The consensus is yes, but Maarja's not backing down.
Yeah, I've just decided to hold strong. So I am Maarja Hewitt.
Maarja.
Maarja.
Yep.
Well, why this came up is because I explained to Joe that how I tell people how to say my name is how are ya, Maarja should rhyme, which I think is quite helpful. And you said, well, it's not how are ya, Maarja.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I still think I'm right.
So AMC, we'll just move on. 101, Joe.
Yeah.
AMC's been around now for 4 or 5 years.
It's been around for a while.
I remember when I started at Advance, and I came in with no background of Amazon ads or anything, and you were talking about Amazon Marketing Cloud. It was so far over my head.
Sure.
And of course, now it's just become more and more sophisticated, but also more important, and advertisers really do kind of need to utilize it to stay on top of the game.
Yep. Yeah. And with AMC, I think it's probably best to start with what it is. A lot of people hear about it and they're like, okay, I need this. Mm-hmm. But there's no need for anything unless you can actually utilize it in terms of making decisions or putting things into action. And so what I see quite a bit is people saying, I need AMC. And then you ask why. And sometimes it's uncertain. Mm-hmm. And it's just because people like us are talking about it quite a bit. But it is a complicated subject and trying to understand what it is. So maybe we'll start there.
Yes.
So Amazon Marketing Cloud, it is a data clean room. Essentially what a data clean room is it's a spot where you can have data from multiple different sources. And why we need this clean room is for advertising data, there's personal information that's included. And we don't want to share that personal information between different sources. And so the clean room, what it's used is it pseudonymizes. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I think so too. Pseudonym.
Yeah. And so what it does is any personal identifying information, it uses a big long number string or something. It makes it anonymized when it comes in, but it also gives an identifying data point that then you can tie together the different data sources. And so where this comes into play is things like if I'm trying to tie together, say Amazon DSP with Amazon sponsored ads going to purchases, I need to know that person saw an ad on DSP and then sponsored and then ended up purchasing. And so I need to tie that together, that information. And so what a data clean room allows us to do is data comes in from each of these sources. It has this unique identifier. You can use that to tie together the information from the different sources, and that gives us some really cool insights. It also allows us to create some really cool audiences. So we can kind of dig into as we go ahead, different reports, and then also different audiences that you can create, which is kind of the 2 main use cases.
I remember a few years ago you had Jack Lindberg on the Ad Project.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking about Amazon Marketing Cloud, and he had an analogy where all of a sudden it kind of clicked in my head for visualizing how AMC works. And it was an analogy about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a show which I watched, which is why it clicked for me. But basically what it was one of the main characters was learning how to DJ. So Jack explained how, you think of AMC like, what is a DJ thing
like
called?
the turntable?
Yeah, turntables. So you've like the turntables. So you have two different music, going against each other. You're putting together to create something new.
Sure.
So it's like taking two different data sets and then providing an output that gives you more insight. So I really liked that analogy. And I also think it's helpful to think of like AMC as a box with data from different pipelines going into it and then coming out as some kind of new product.
Yeah. And so and I would recommend go check out that podcast that we did with Jack.
Oh, Jack is such a good...
Yep, shout out to Jack. Got to see him in New York a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And so with these data clean rooms, what it allows you to do is I just have information from different sources. And I can't share everything there because, again, it's got personal or private information there. But how do I tie it together? That's where data clean rooms comes into play. And it's not just Amazon that's doing this. It's not just Amazon Marketing Cloud. There's AWS clean rooms, so that's part of Amazon, but you can use different sources that come into that. There's other types of data clean rooms that you can implement too. So it's not just an Amazon specific thing. Where the power of AMC really comes in is you have all these preset feeds going into it. And so Amazon's DSP, sponsored ads, any purchase information, other items like attribution, these can all tie in together. And so that's where it makes it a really powerful tool for advertisers in the retail media space.
Right. And rather than going into like the ad console and getting sponsored ads reports and then going into the DSP console and downloading reports there, otherwise you'd have to do things separately. And AMC allows you to get all of your holistic Amazon ads insights in one spot and just go to a deeper, more granular level.
Yeah. So maybe what's helpful and what's helpful for me to understand AMC is just different use cases. So what we'll start on is the reporting side. And then what we can get into is the audience side too. So for reporting, just think of any reports that you need to tie together these multiple areas of the funnel together. So like if I go into the advertising console, I can see my sponsored ad metrics. And there's a lot of metrics that are there. I don't necessarily need AMC if I'm just running sponsored ads. And there's some insights you can get with AMC from your sponsored ads, and so there's more and more capabilities there. But I can get a pretty good picture of my sponsored ad just from the advertising console. Where it comes into play quite a bit more is if I'm utilizing Amazon's DSP for more upper funnel ads. And then I have sponsored ads running too. And I'm tracking to the purchase. And so items that can be really helpful is like customer journey. Being able to see, people don't just see one ad and purchase usually. So typical touch points that we see for somebody who's newly introduced to the brand, 6 to 8 times they had to see an ad before they purchase. It really depends what products you're looking for. If it's just, a commoditized product, I might just type in my search, click once, purchase. But if it's anything that requires some more education, I'm introducing them to the brand itself. Think 6 to 8 times. And from there, what we can do is see things like overlaps. So if people get exposed to an upper funnel ad and sponsored ad, what's the likelihood that they can convert? There's things
purchase timeline.
Purchase timeline is another cool one. So the timeline that they first saw my ad to when they actually purchased, it's usually a lot longer than you think too. And so this helps us so for some of these, say first touch attribution. For some of these upper funnel ads, I can't just look at ROAS. ROAS is calculated. It's any ROAS comes from the last touch attribution. And so what that means is the last ad that I saw gets attributed with the sale, and that factors into our ROAS. For any of these upper funnel ads, if they had to see an ad 6 to 8 times, not many people are purchasing after they saw that first ad.
No.
And so ROAS will look bad. But if we look at things like first touch attribution, Like, hey, you saw this video ad on Prime Video. And that really got them excited about the brand. They saw 3 more ads and they purchased after that. Now we can see, all right, first touch attribution, like this upper funnel ad leads to the most sales. We can look at customer journey and say, okay, if we string these 3 ads together, it has a much higher conversion rate than other types of ads. Path to or time to purchase, we can say, all right, we want to stagger the frequency of how these ads are shown over this certain time period, and kind of have a cascading effect of the ads as they go. So all these reports help to educate us on, in those instances, kind of on the flow of the ads and how they're structured. So one example right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's good to talk about like what is where do you find AMC? Because I don't think people really can always understand that right away too. Like it has its different console.
Sure.
It has a query editor. It has a library of different templates. So SQL is the language that it's based off of, and so you do need some technical expertise.
Yeah. They're making it a lot easier, though.
Yeah.
So the AMC console itself, if you're familiar with relational databases, it's set up like that. But really just think of a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, and each one has different data. And then what you do is you use this SQL data set or language to essentially tie the information together. The nice thing is that you don't have to know SQL. So there's a couple different tools.
Yep.
So there's templates that you can go into, and they're automatically the SQL, the language is created to be able to tie these reports together. There's some no-code queries or templates that you can do. And so these ones you can just punch in some numbers. It'll do everything in the background for you. There's another cool case that they've rolled out where you can now use AI, or you can just type in natural language and say, hey, I want to find all new to brand customers that were exposed to this ad and eventually purchased.
I love that because you basically just need to start with a question that you want an answer to.
Yep.
And for non-technical people, what a great way to make AMC more accessible.
I think it is the way you should get introduced into AMC. So it should not be like, hey, I need AMC, and then you ask why, and it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But where the introduction to AMC should be is like, hey, I have this question. All right, I'm starting to run further up the funnel, or I want to see how many people come back and purchase after the fact, or I want to see what my lifetime value is of a new to brand customer, or I want to see the cost per acquisition to bring a new to brand customer in. Like, these are all questions that you can ask. For many of these, they're pre-built templates that you can utilize within Amazon Marketing Cloud. But then you can just ask the question too. And that's the beauty of AI and tying all this data together with the clean rooms is now I can start with the question. And then from that question, I'm either it's going to impact my strategy I have for advertising or allow me to optimize differently.
And it's, I think, important to note too that when you're in the AMC console, and whether you use one of their instructional queries or you're using the AMC SQL generator or whatever you're doing, what the output is a spreadsheet.
Sure.
And so, like agencies and many folks have come up with, we have come up with ways to visualize those data sets. But if you're just in the AMC console, it's just data that you get back. So you have to know how to read that and what it means and implement it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so it's still... There's a bunch of tools, and that's why we built our streamlined software on top of it, to be able to get these standard pieces of information that are really helpful for us, and then be able to visualize it and be able to analyze it very quickly. We've built our own software on top of it. There's a bunch of other providers that have also built on top of AMC. And Amazon's continually making it easier and easier to get this information. I don't know if they're going to actually include visualizations in the platform at some time, or just rely on partners. But there's a lot of really cool tools out there to help visualize it.
So we talked about insights. Oh, one thing we should talk about for insights is they just recently rolled out a new data set. So the look back window for AMC data used to be 13 months?
Yeah, a little bit over a year, I believe.
Yep. And now they just rolled out a 5-year look back data set. So that is obviously quite a bit longer and really helpful in terms of looking back at 5 years of purchase history, learning about your lifetime cycle and the customer journey at a whole different level.
Yeah. So some areas where the 5-year look back is really helpful is if I want to look back at seasonality. Only having 13 months before makes it a lot trickier. So you can input, like, I want to get certain date ranges, and that can help set strategy. Say if you're a highly seasonal product, or really centered around gifts or around summer or winter or whatever it is, that can be really helpful. Other areas are like lifetime value. And so this is a common question that we have. Like, we talked about more like optimization and structure, like customer journey, frequency, first touch attribution. But there's also other metrics that we can get, like lifetime value and cost per acquisition. And these are really good metrics, especially if you get a lot of repeat purchases, or you can build off that brand loyalty with that original purchase. Because these reports can set our overarching strategy. And they really help for conversations as you go up in an organization to paint the picture on why we should allocate more advertising budget, say to upper funnel. It's always a really hard question as a marketer. And so with lifetime value and cost per acquisition for like a new to brand customer, if you can get more of that information, it makes it so much easier to justify the spend that you have. And we have a ton of clients that are continually shifting more and more budget from more traditional sources like linear to the retail media side. And one of the key drivers is you can just justify that spend quite a bit more. So you have much more visibility into what it's doing. And so, if I look at reporting, there's one, and it kind of sets like structure and optimization that we have. Then there's another one where it's like overarching, like helping to set our strategy, like cost per acquisition. We break it down into like new to brand, lifetime ROAS, where you're looking at like what product I can introduce people to for my brand that leads to the best lifetime value, and also takes into account how much it costs to get them in the door. So you can get really deep with this stuff. But these types of reports that you can get, it's not going to be something that we optimize on every day. But it's going to set that overarching strategy and really help like budget allocation. How aggressive do we get? How far up the funnel do we go? These reports can be extremely helpful for that.
Yeah, and I guess another important thing to note is Amazon Marketing Cloud, when it was first rolled out, you had to have access to DSP in order to have access to AMC. And so the big announcement last year was that Amazon was opening it up to sponsored ads, AMC audiences. And I do believe an advertiser still needs to be with a partner agency that has access to AMC. But that really opened up AMC to all of our clients and any advertiser that is with an agency that has an AMC console.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so that was a big announcement. We've been able to open it up for every one of our clients that we have, whether they're running in Amazon DSP or not. There's still a lot of really cool information that you can get if you're just running sponsored. It's going to be a lot more of those like helping to set overarching strategy versus optimization. We've already got a lot of really good tools and insights for the optimization side. But what it can open up is like, all right, new to brand based off of specific sponsored campaigns or sponsored ad types. And so we can invest more or less based off of that. And so everything doesn't have to be based off of that original ROAS that you get. You can take it to a deeper level, and how is my advertising going to have the biggest impact overall? So being able to open it up for everybody, and right now you need to go through a partner so they can initiate and get in place that AMC instance. So I would say if you're looking around at a partner, just make sure that you get AMC enabled no matter where you're at. The usefulness of AMC will depend based off of where you're at in your advertising journey and how far up the funnel you're going. But it should be something that they offer. And even if you're not quite there yet, where you're going to utilize some reports, but not all, you want to have a partner that you can grow into over time. So I would just make sure that that's a core question that you have when you're looking at working with a partner or a software provider.
Yeah, moving forward, I think in any Amazon journey that AMC is only going to become more powerful and helpful, I think.
Yeah. And then I think the third use case for AMC. So we've got more of the optimization structure reports, and then we've got the overall like strategic setting reports. The third one is creating audiences.
So this is like the tangible result of AMC that you can put into use.
Yeah. And so for this, like what you can do in using the AI SQL generation too, it makes it a lot easier to create these different audiences. So you could say, hey, I want to create an audience of people who have been exposed to one ad and have viewed my product detail page but haven't purchased. Or I want to develop an audience that purchased 90 days ago, but has not purchased again for this ASIN. And so what these audiences allow you to do is you can then push them to the different platforms that you can run them on. So like sponsored, I can push it that way. To the DSP console, I can push it that way. And so these audiences really allow you to open up like who I can target with my ads. Now that sponsored allows you to overlay an audience with the bid multiplier. That's a huge plus that we can now layer in. So you can utilize these audiences in sponsored. But then, another obvious use case is then with Amazon's DSP, from these insights that we get and from the strategy that we see through all the reporting, now we can develop like, okay, it'd be really cool to layer in this audience here within this funnel. The AI now built in makes it much easier to do that. So a really cool update there. And that allows you to target specific subsets of people.
Yeah, and then you can really use AMC in kind of a cyclical fashion of, getting the insights, helping that form your strategy, creating an audience, using that in your strategy, looking at the insights, and continually refining based on what you're finding with AMC.
For sure. Yep. So, yeah, it kind of brings it full cycle on in how it should tie into the optimization, the strategy, and be continually circling back.
Yeah.
And so that's where, AMC is also not a one and done thing. For the strategy setting, like you don't have to refresh quite as much, but it's still really good to see like, hey, now I set up this whole repurchase campaign and cross-purchase campaign to try to increase brand loyalty. Let's see what that actually did to lifetime value. So there's a lot of ways where this continually ties in, and what we do changes these values. So lots of insights that you can get.
Yeah.
And lots of potential.
Yeah. So AMC, just to wrap up, insights and audiences. It can be used in so many different ways. And a good place to start is with probably an AMC provider who can kind of guide you along the way, because there is some technical know-how, but you can also do the basics and still see some results right away. Yeah.
And so I would say if you are interested in AMC, first start with like some of the questions that you're trying to answer. Just make sure it's worth your time to dig into it. In most cases, it probably is. Start with the questions and then find a provider that can get you access to it. And then start playing around. So either utilizing the different dashboards that that provider has or digging into the AMC console itself. I think it'll open up the possibilities quite a bit more, just seeing some of these examples and playing around with it. And, with AI tools, even outside of Amazon, so you can generate some SQL and put it into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, break this apart, tell me what it's doing. It's not as complicated as it initially looks. And so tons of potential there. I'd say start playing around with it and getting good examples. I think it'll open up your eyes on how you can utilize it within your advertising strategy.
Yeah. So this was AMC 101. We're going to have Ad Advanced CTO Matt Wicklin on soon to the Ad Project podcast. And he's our wizard of AMC. So we'll get a little deeper with him.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be good to have Matt back on the show. Yeah.
He'll be looking through the weeds.
Yeah. Yep.
He dives deep. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn. Stay up to date, and we'll see you next time on the Ad Project.
See you next time.